Hello, 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 everybody. This is Renault, and I want to thank you for tuning in. This is the final home stretch. I am looking through comic creators on the Bleeding Cool's top 100 most powerful and influential people in comics. We did 100 through 75. Then we did 74 through 50. Then we did 49 through 25. And now this is the home stretch. 24 through number 1. And I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Whether this is the first time or you've seen my previous 3, thank you so much. I appreciate you as a viewer, and I want you to know that this has been an interesting New Year's Eve for me. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to head to a party. And I don't know if that's a good idea because I am tired. I'm worn out. Tuckered out, all you could say. I think a lot of it is a carb shock. You ever eat pizza and then you feel really tired? Well, that's how I'm feeling. Combined with some alcohol and some headache medicine. Oh boy. My body's ready to call it quits. But we've got to soldier on with Rich Johnston's horrible, sloppy, awful writing. Run-on sentences, mispunctuation, bizarre highlighted text, weird bolding. It's just a trash fire of an article. And then, of course, there's the rankings that don't make any sense on top of that. So, let's get started. Number 24, Mr. David Steinberger. Let's read this. He has moved up in the rankings. In charge of Comixology, the digital comic book distributor and publisher that continue to provide a very strong way for people far from comic shops or bookstores to connect with their favorite stories, and has seen the likes of Die, Miss Marvel, and Critical Role target a far larger audience than print would have allowed them. And Comixology's creation and promotion of such titles has changed the rules by which people can successfully publish. Now, I want you to know that this is a whole load of bucket of bullshit. Nobody gives a damn about Comixology. Comixology has been a source for lots of comic books being pirated. Peter Samedi gave proof copies to a bunch of comic review sites. One of those review sites uploaded his proof copies to a pirate site, but let's just say that's not the only way people get access to pirates. So yeah, Comixology, I'm sure they might have been trying their best, but Comixology performed so poorly that it has actually shut down. And if you look carefully at this paragraph here, you'll see that he speaks of Comixology in the past tense. Read it again. The digital comic distributor and publisher that continued. That's actually not a typo on Rich Johnston's part, because Comixology has shut down. There is no way in hell David Steinberger should have moved up in the rankings. He should have moved way down. Not necessarily through any fault of his own, but Comixology is shut down. It's done. Dead. It's no longer doing what it's supposed to do. It's shut down. He has much less influence than he had before. Moving on to number 23, Brian Michael Bendis. Ooh, boy. His move to DC led to editorial fights over fiefdoms, but his sales have been far softer than anticipated. Still, he was able to make major changes with Superman regarding his secret identity, with plenty more to come in the lead up to the reboot, and has continued to bring his friends into DC with him for the Wonder Comics line, even if the creator-owned titles he also brought over have diminished. He'll spend 2020 seeking to justify his privileged status at the publisher. And oh, goddamn. For those who are already familiar with comics, you know that Brian Michael Bendis' arrival at DC has been nothing but a trash fire. Not just because his comics are terrible, because Brian Michael Bendis is an overrated writer. He was never that great to begin with when he was at Marvel, but several good stories had to be canceled because he wanted full power over a huge swath of DC continuity. uh, Superman and anything even remotely associated or connected to Superman. I'm not even going to speculate about everything even remotely associated with Superman mythos because it just is. But what was it? Wonder Kids? Not Wonder Kids. Well, the point is, Damian and John Clark, they both had a series, and I'm too drunk to remember what it was, but they had a fantastic, high performing series, and there's something very worrisome about this as well. He continued to bring his friends into DC with him. That's awful. All the trash people that Brian Michael Bendis associates with, all of his clique, everybody associated who's friends with him. That includes Kelly Sue DeConnick, a bunch of people from the Portland crew, uh, David Walker, God, just so many people. Because the Portland crew are like last year, or a little over a year, more than a year ago, year and a half. Your boy Zach talked about like there is this Portland comics mafia, and this Portland comics mafia, what it means is that you have to suck up and kiss these people's ass in order to have any chance in hell at ever having a career in the mainstream industry. What this means is that let's say you're a great writer, but you live in Florida, well, all the connections in the world don't matter. Let's say you're a great writer and you're in Portland, but you're in the outs with those people from the Portland Comics Mafia. Like, oh, and that includes just so many people. It's and like I mentioned before, in like there's Portland State University, which actually has a comics major, which means Portland State University is pumping out a bunch of establishment shows who are connected to Brian Michael Bendis. If you want a job at coloring, editing, any sort of thing, with you have to run it through Brian Michael Bendis, and Brian Michael Bendis is a fucking asshole, and I assure you, he ain't the only one. The entire crew at Portland, well, I don't want to say the entire crew, but a large portion of the crew at Portland are a bunch of fucking assholes. And you have to kiss their ring and bend the knee to those jerks in order to have any chance in hell at having a career in comics. And it's fucking bullshit. Moving on, and which goes to back to Brian Michael Bendis. His Superman run is terrible. His characters are derivatives, especially when it comes to Black women. God, it's copy paste every single time. Moving on, Robert Kirkman, who has also moved down in their rankings, chairman of Skybound and partner at Image Comics. That should be a period here. Or Robert Kirkman is the chairman of Skybound and a partner at Image Comics, period. Moving on to a new sentence, you get a wag of the finger because I don't think it's safe for me to have too much more alcohol. So I'm not going to take a shot, but I'm going to give you a wag of the finger. For those who are just tuning in, we're 77 comics in or so. Every time I got some sort of bad writing from Rich Johnson, I was taking a shot. I am fully loaded, so to speak, so I can't really handle any more alcohol. I don't think it would be safe. So I'm giving, just every time a fuck up from Rich Johnson, I'm giving a wag of the finger. So I'm giving him a wag of the finger for not turning that into two sentences for more easy reading, more convenient reading. I'm very drunk. At least I think I'm very drunk. Anyway, however, there are strong performances from his other titles, and Robert Kirkman is still an image partner and publisher of all the Skybound books. Period. Let's leave off his own and others, shall we, Rich Johnston? I'm a better writer drunk than you are sober, unless you also wrote this article either drunk or high. If you confess to writing this article either drunk or high, I forgive all of you and for your sins. I have no right to to forgive. But you know what? It's just such a poorly written article. God damn it. Rich Johnson hates the English language. Moving on, Tom Brevoort. Wow, another fucking asshole son of a bitch. Executive editor and senior vice president of publishing at Marvel Comics, overseeing Marvel's line and as a strong public face of Marvel Comics. So, somewhere in this run-on sentence should have been a period. With a strong and active social media following. Actually, his social media following isn't that strong or active. He doesn't get very good engagement. I've seen his tweets. So, executive editor. So, look at it this way. Tom Brevoort is. There's nothing wrong with starting your sentences with the title of the subject of this paragraph and then is. It sure as hell would help with these awkward introductions. Tom Brevoort is the executive editor and senior vice president of publishing at Marvel Comics. Period. He oversees Marvel's line and is a public face of Marvel Comics, along with having an active social media following. There, I just fixed those 3 sentences? Wait, is that really... Yeah, I turned this one long run-on sentences into 3 distinct, stronger sentences. One, the longest-standing employees at the publisher. What the fuck? The longest... I want you to read... Listen to this. The longest-standing employees, plural, at the publisher, after celebrating 30 years, he is, to all intents and purposes, Marvel Comics. What? What? That made no sense. So let's rewrite that. And by the way, multiple wags of the finger. I'd be taking multiple shots right now if my bottle of wine wasn't empty. Again, I do have more alcohol in this house, but I don't feel comfortable drinking it because I might wind up dead. Now, let's rewrite that sentence. One of the longest employed, or longest lasting, there you go. One of the longest lasting employees at Marvel Comics after celebrating 30. Actually, you know what? Let's just turn this all around. Tom Brevoort has been with Marvel Comics for 30 years, period. He is, for all intents and purposes, the epitome of Marvel Comics, or epitomizes what Marvel Comics stands for. There, I fixed. There's just not a single one of those sentences that was correct. Major wags of the finger to Rich Johnston. Fuck you and whoever trained you how to write. They can die. No. We will not say that. We will not say that. Moving on to Stan Heidemann. Again, you've got a new entry at rank number 20. Let me guess. He's some long-lasting employee who should have been on this list for several years, but Rich Johnson has had his nose so far up the establishment's ass that he's been ranking nobodies for far too long, and actual people with actual influence haven't been on this list when they should have been. Now, he's done a reassessment of the entire comics industry and has realized that there have been powerful, influential voices in comics that have not been acknowledged in previous years. That's why Stan Heidemann is a new entry, even though he should not be a new entry. He should have been on this list for a very long time. New president of Jeppy Family Enterprises. He's an industry newcomer. Wow, way to discredit myself. Whatever, I take it all back. He's new to the industry. That's why he's a new entry. I feel silly. Oh, so silly. I feel silly and witty and... How does that go? Anyway. But sits at the head of the table of Diamond and all of Jeppy's other various holdings. God, this is like the 5th time I've seen he's a voice of change within the organization. And we've already early signs of seismic change, including the departure of Roger Fletcher. promotion of various VPs at Diamond, and consolidation of leadership between Diamond and Alliance. Now, I have no idea what Alliance is, and because, once again, Tom King is a bad writer, I will not be able to find out what that is. But let's rewrite some of that run-on sentence. He is a voice of change within the organization. Period. We've seen some seismic changes at the company, including the departure of Robert Fletcher. Period. We've also seen several promotions of various vice presidents at Diamond, and the consolidation of leadership between Diamond and Alliance. Again, I have no idea what Alliance is, but it's been consolidated with Diamond. Number 19, Joe Quesada. Now, this is the asshole. He actually should be much further down. All the high-level VPs at Marvel should be much further down, including Tom Brevoort. Tom Brevoort has actually lost a lot of influence because of some new leadership changes that have taken place. Moving on, Joe Quesada has gone down in the rankings. He used to be the modern face of Marvel Comics. Period. Joe Quesada has managed to grab some of the magic he once had. Period. He's no longer the chief creative officer at Marvel, but he is now. He's no longer the chief executive officer at Marvel. He is now the executive vice president and creative director. Period. Joe Quesada is closely associated with the publisher, and has stepped up to take a more proactive role within the publisher. What the fuck was he doing before? He's taking a more active role. What the hell was he doing before? What was he? He was asleep at the wheel, but officially, what was he doing? Like, was that his official job, to sleep at the wheel, as Marvel slowly turned into a trash fire? A strong political player at the publisher, he can also bring his still much in demand artistic skills to push one particular project over another. Once again, Joe Quesada is at Marvel Comics. He should not be pushing one particular project over the other. In an ideal world, he would be pushing them all equally and allowing them to stand on their own merit. That's the problem. Joe Quesada is playing favorites. He's limiting and he's influencing who gets the promotion and who doesn't, and he's not necessarily allowing the cream to rise to the top. Oh, I just can't. Let's move on. Bob Harras. His influence has gone up. Editor-in-Chief at DC Publishing Mom. Excellent. A clear, concise sentence for a change. Let's see how long this lasts. This is more of a managerial role than at rival publishers, but Harras has a strong reputation for keeping the comic books coming out on time and enforcing stringent penalties for those who don't. Now, the irony, of course, is that Doomsday Clock has been notoriously late. I think every issue after the third one has been late. I mean, this is a 12-issue comic that has taken 2.5 years to finish running. So, the thing is, I think Jeff Johns is so influential that Bob Harras couldn't say or do anything about it. I don't know whose fault it was that Doomsday Clock did not come out in a timely fashion, but I just know that to say that Bob Harras is in charge of making sure that books are going out on time, that's kind of embarrassing. I don't know if it's embarrassing for Bob Harras or for Jeff Johns, but anyway. A strong relationship with Jim Lee going back decades, Harras plays certain favorites among the creative teams, and this year he was finally able to fire Tom King from Batman. With all due respect, if Bob Harris is the editor-in-chief, unless Tom King was getting some sort of protection from a vice president or something, he should have been able to fire Tom King from Batman whenever he felt he needed to fire Tom King from Batman. I don't know if that was somebody higher up to the editor-in-chief preventing that from happening, but if Bob Harris wanted to fire Tom King, Bob Harris should have been able to fire Tom King. But did Bob Harris even want to fire Tom King? I don't know. Wow. A stave. John Nay was ranked 17 last year, and he's ranked 17 this year. Publisher of Marvel Comics. A low public profile for a man of such a position. He has a long experience as publisher of Wildstorm, Senior Vice President of Business Development at DC, CEO of Cryptozoic. I've heard of them. He has an unmatched breadth across disciplines, media, and brands, especially in comics, and seems to know everyone as a result. A strong political player, seriously, Rich Johnson, you need a crash course on punctuation, 2 crash courses on run-on sentences, and then 2 crash courses on when to put text in quotes, when to put book titles in quotes, when to underline them, and when to put them in italics. A strong political player, he oversees the health of the comics line, keeping up quality, managing budgets, and guiding marketing. Marvel Comics here their secret weapon when it comes to making a lot of money. Now, it's okay. CEO Cryptozoic, that's right. That's their toy line. Cryptozoic is their toy line. I remember because I've seen Cryptozoic as like they make a board game called the that I don't personally enjoy, but a friend of mine enjoys a lot. Moving on, Steve Geppi, president and sole owner of Diamond Comics Distribution. He has been taking a stronger hand on the tiller, moving from people from Diamond to the overarching Geppi family organization, leading many to speculate if a massive change to the direct market is coming. Well, a change to the direct market should have come a long time ago. However, I don't really. One moment. I don't really know how that change would have come about. I would actually recommend somebody hit a Comic Purged, because the direct market is a trash fire. That much I do know. I'm not quite sure how the specifics of the trash fire, other than that it is one, and that the Geppi family has had a near monopoly in comics distribution, and that has greatly hurt comic book shops, and also some of the smaller publishers. Naturally, it doesn't hurt Marvel DC because they've been sucking the, David Gabriel, Senior Vice President of Sales at Marvel. Ructions at Marvel? Ructions? I don't know if he's using like one of those SAT words or if this is a typo. Ructions at Marvel have helped David Gabriel this year, still getting his one major death per quarter. Once made that there was a scheduled character death every quarter. What? What the fuck? What the fuck is this sentence, Richard Johnson? What the fuck is it? Ugh. Anyway, I'm not even going to try and correct it, because I have no idea what he's trying to say. I think he's trying to say that there should be one death per quarter, but there's clearly been more than one death a quarter, especially when it comes to the X-Men line. In charge of pushing the public perception of the Marvel superhero across media, and has considerable editorial input as well to create the kind of comics that he can make everything sit up. You mean everyone sit up and take notice? Of, remove this of, please. Take this of and shove it. Anyway, oh boy, how do I fix this? For the sake of just moving on with my life, I'm not even going to bother. Other than to say that the perception of Marvel heroes in the comics industry has never been worse. I mean, yeah, the reputation of superheroes in the movies, but how much did he have a say in it? I don't think he... That's just due to the movies being generally good. When it comes to the Marvel comics and the perception of superheroes, as some of you are aware, the superheroes in Marvel comics are not heroic. They issued veiled threats to get what they want against common citizens who don't have superpowers. Think about, say, Cyclops. I think it was Honey Badger threatened to just beat the shit out of a guy for littering. Think about that to Captain Planet, where if a Planeteer would say, they would give a speech about how important it is to protect the Earth, and how all of us doing a little bit can help, but all of us doing a little bit can hurt. They would give some sort of moral spiel and make the guy feel bad, while also recognizing the importance of how you shouldn't litter. But instead, you've got people in comics just threatening to beat the shit out of people. That's not heroic. You've got freaking Kamala Khan acting as a little brown shirt and putting people in extrajudicial prisons without trial in black ops sites. That's not heroic. You've got Rashawn Lucas, also known as the Patriot, firebombing banks and not learning about responsibility. There's nothing heroic about that. You've got Riri Williams stealing stuff that doesn't belong to her and building the Iron Man costume, not because she has absolutely no right to it. She's just a fucking thief, and she acts entitled to it. She just steals shit that doesn't belong to her. That's not heroic. There's nothing heroic about Marvel's most iconic heroes of the past 10 years. You've got Kate Bishop, who's always treating the Clint Barton like a little bitch, and she's the good Hawkeye. He's the bad Hawkeye. There's nothing heroic about putting down another fellow hero who hasn't fucked up. There's nothing heroic. This guy is in charge of that perception. He's doing a terrible job. Fortunately, it does show that his influence has gone down as opposed to up. So that makes sense. Moving on. Miller. Possibly the best living comic book writer and artist through a mixture of films based on his comics and using his name in their titles, as well as the set legacy of The Dark Knight Returns. Miller has more Dark Knight plans for DC, more Sin City, and 300 plans for Dark Horse, and now his Netflix deals, which are likely to keep him near the top of this list if they continue to sell in the same way. Again, this is somebody who's primarily making... Actually, you know what? That's not fair. He has legit had his name out there for a very long time, but I don't like this emphasis on Netflix deals. Netflix deals. And now his messages appear on the streets of Hong Kong in the protest. But it's his new CEO, Celan Thomas, who's the driving force here and set to make a name for herself to rival his. CEO of what? If Frank Miller has a company that somebody else is the CEO of, Rich Johnston, it would have behooved you to at least name that company. Which you don't do here because you are a terrible writer. Moving on to Donny Cates, whose influence has moved up. I don't think this is going to last much longer. Can this man do no wrong at Marvel? He revived Venom from... Wait a minute. Hold on. A writer should not have this much influence at ranking of number 13. Rich Johnston is mistaking popularity, or whose dick he wants to suck, as power and influence. Donny Cates is not the 13th most powerful person in comics. There are editors, vice presidents, producers, editors who are more powerful than this guy. And I don't know if he's even a staff writer. I think he's just a contractor. Anyway, Fear by Venom kicked off the Absolute Carnage series that outperformed parent books, ran a series of cosmic books, including Silver Surfer, and landed on Thor, ticking off a checklist of comics he wanted to work on, all while keeping his creator-owned titles spinning in prominence. You might want to name some of those, if they were really that important. The closest Marvel has to a guaranteed hit writer, Rich Johnston, being the terrible writer that he is, just leaves it all blank. I don't know if that's because he got high, or if he fell asleep, or if this should have been a period instead of a comma. But the closest Marvel has to a guaranteed hit writer, technically I think you could end the sentence there. I wouldn't. I wouldn't have ended it like this, because I don't think Donny Cates is that great of a writer. Moving on, Scott Snyder, again, a writer, I don't care how popular they are, should not be ranked number 12, ahead of several vice presidents, leading editors with leadership, con managers, etc., etc. Should not be this high. Wag of the finger for this, there's been a lot of wags of the finger that I should have been giving. So just wag all 10 of your fingers. And wag some of your toes too. And if you're a dog watching, wag your tail. Give all the wags that I've been missing out on. Anyway, moving on, Scott Snyder. Imagine what it would look like if Brian Bendis sold well. Ouch. That is a pretty sick burn. With Justice League and Batman Last Night concluding with Metal 2, Dark Metal to come, Scott Snyder is big enough for DC that creative summits come to his house rather than him travel. I think that's a bit of a hyperbola, but maybe it's true, I don't know. Along with the biggest creator-owned launch in recent years in Undiscovered Country, which was not that great from what I saw, 2019 was Scott's year, and 2019 should be too, at least until the DC reboot comes along. C.B. Cebulski. This is somebody whose influence should not be moving up, with Kevin Feige moving into town, all of the Marvel upper management, and what is it called? C officers? None of those people should be moving up. They should stay the same or be moving down, because Kevin Feige does not like the Marvel group. Anyway, editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, he spent 2019 slowly remaking Marvel in his own image. Fat, disgusting, and full of food. He has been pushing connective tissue, create more of a shared universe in recent years, and even a bit of fun around the place. What? That has nothing to do with anything. That's just sniffing Cebulski's ass. That's what this entry is. Kind of like several of the DC editors, where Rich Johnston clearly has nothing to say, so he just writes some bullshit. Mike Richardson, who has also moved up the rankings. Usually when someone saves a company, they go down in the power stakes, but a hands-off approach from China to Mike Richardson's Dark Horse, with added investments, has seen Richardson keep control and make bold, impressive moves through the year. Dark Horse Media has now composed of Dark Horse Entertainment, through which he has a deal with both Netflix and Universal, Dark Horse Comics, and the Things from Another World retail chain. Okay, that's not a bad write-up, except that he does not, absolutely not deserve to be ranked number 10 in the power rankings. Say what you want about C.B. Cebulski. He's a fat, disgusting slob. He cares more about food than comics. He gets double penetrated by Tamara Bonvillain and Max Visaggio. But what I will say is that he is certainly more influential than Mike Richardson. Dark Horse is still a third-tier publisher who print, like, comics a lot of people have never heard of. Jonathan Hickman ranked at number 9. A new entry. Now, John Hickman, as profound as a writer as he is still just a writer. He's not an editor. He's not a vice president. He's not in charge of anything. He's just a writer. However, the reason why I don't have a problem with him being ranked higher than some editors, but again, not senior vice presidents and crap like that, is because it's obvious that he's pretty much running the show at X-Men while Jordan White was asleep at the wheel and turning the X-Men into a trash fire as he tried to bang his work girlfriends. Jordan White is a piece of shit editor. Anyway, Jonathan Hickman. He took a brand that all had died through excess toxification and wastage, and overnight took the X-Books back to the top of the charts with House of X, and has kept the X titles back into the top 10, even when shipping 5 books a week. All the time while launching new, self-publishing titles on the back of them. Again, he sucks Marvel's... Rich Johnson is sucking Marvel's dick here by mentioning all of the good work that Jonathan Hickman has allegedly done for X-Men, but refusing to acknowledge what those independent comics are. You notice that he didn't pull that crap with Scott Snyder. Actually, he did pull that crap. No, he didn't. He made it very clear that Undiscovered Country was one of his indie comics, while sucking his dick at DC. But when it comes to Marvel, it's never mentioned any other works that they've done. It's just talk about the Marvel. Oh, and by the way, he's had some indie comics as well. I can't tell you what they are, because I need to make sure I suck that Marvel D, and don't take away from that Marvel attention. Yeah, fuck you, Rich Johnson. As for this paragraph, it's the only one that seems tolerably written. So far. Eric Stevenson. Now, publisher of Image Comics. No one has quite the power, and willing to use it, to take a completely unknown comic creator and make them the talk of the town, as well as pulling mainstream comic creators from Marvel and DC. From their Marvel and DC teams. Stevenson is the bottleneck through which all comics are approved for publication on, and also seeks out new talent, keen for a diverse group of creators, on the stage at Image Expo these days. Okay, not a horribly written, but is it Image having an up year? If Image Comics is having an up year, then Eric Stevens should be ranked up, not down. He's not losing power, he's gaining power. Dan Buckley has had his status moved down, but look carefully, right at the start. His influence has moved down, but he just got promoted from Marvel publisher to full-time Marvel president. That does not make sense, because Rich Johnson is a terrible writer. Dan Buckley has the reputation of being the connecting glue of Marvel Comics, where TV meets games, meets comics, meets merchandise. The promotion of Kevin Feige above him has seen him knock down a couple of pegs, but he has the knowledge that Feige relies on to give him the lay of the land. So, it's not that Dan Buckley has lost power, it's that the position of president is not as powerful as it once was, because Kevin Feige has moved in, and again, a lot of the Marvel Comics people and C managers, corporate management, are terrible, and many of them should have been fired a long time ago, if not replaced. David Saylor, new entry. As I've mentioned before, I'm very hesitant when I see a new entry ranked especially at number 5. It's like, where has Rich Johnson been? Asleep at the wheel from last year. Scholastic Vice President, Creative Director, Trade Publish. Or should that be Creative Director of Trade Publishing? Yeah, that's what it should be. Scholastic Vice President and Creative Director of Trade Publishing, Okay, that's fix that sentence. He is the founder and editorial director of Graphics, the Scholastic Kids graphic novel line that dominates bestseller lists. I want you all to know, for those who are tuning into this, the graphic novel lines for Scholastic have been dominating for a very, very long time. But because Rich Johnston has had his nose so far up the comics industry asshole, he was asleep at the wheel when Scholastic was eating everyone's lunch. And congratulations to Scholastic, by the way. Good for you. Now that Scholastic has eaten everybody's lunch in the comics mainstream, and people are finally starting to notice, you're going to see a lot of new entries from Scholastic right near the top. But that's not because they haven't been powerful and influential people. It's because the comics industry has really gotten a kick in the pants when it comes to Scholastic, children's comics, young adult, manga, and all that. They've been sniffing their own farts and circle jerking each other for so long that they haven't been paying attention to what's really going on. That's why you're seeing this guy show up at 5 out of nowhere. He's been an influential person for a very long time. It's just Rich Johnston is just now noticing. Anyway, once the art director for the American editions of the Harry Potter books, he now puts together one of the most successful comic book lines in modern history. Reina Tiggle, moving up to number 4, which makes me curious at where she was before. The second best-selling comic book creator in America, with her graphic novels constantly topping the proper bookseller lists as Scholastic book printing presses were reserved in advance for her 2 2019 volumes. Share your smile and guts. Once again, we get another run-on sentence that could easily be broken down into 2 or possibly 3 sentences. So many of DC and Marvel's bookstore AIM titles are inspired by her work in a hope to get close to what she has achieved. And you want to know why they can't reach it? Well, I've never read a Reina Telgemeier book, but what I do know is that Marvel and DC, if they've been aping what she's been doing, they've been doing a terrible job at it. Because at least in Marvel's case, their children's books have been so terrible that they've actually been outsourcing some of their most popular books, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, and Black Panther, to IDW just to see how it works. If IDW had better writers, and they would have been the Spider-Man line might have been doomed because they've been licensing out children's books. But there's no reason why those children's books should not be going gangbusters. But that's because IDW themselves don't have a stable crop of good writers. Moving on to Pam Lifford, Walter Hamada, and Jim Lee. Pam Lifford has moved down. Walter Hamada is a new entry, and Jim Lee is moving up. I don't know why these 3 are together. The DC Triumvirate. Pam Lifford is the president of Warner Brothers. And by the way, I am quite comfortable in saying that Warner Brothers is consistently among the top 3 worst entertainment companies on the planet. On any given year, they may not necessarily be the worst outright. That would go to sometimes EA, sometimes Activision, or what have you. But easily in the top 3. Warner Brothers is a horrible and incompetent entertainment organization. So, Pam Lifford is the president of Warner Brothers Global Brands and Experiences. Walter Hamada is the head of DC Films. And Jim Lee is the publisher and chief creative officer of DC and have created a tight threesome when it comes to shepherding the future of the DC brand, with Jim Lee taking those broad brushstrokes and implementing that vision in comic books. Wow, this run-on sentence can go on for days. Just go on for days and days and days at a time. Jesus Christ. Hamada guiding DC to not 1, but $2 billion box office blockbusters with Aquaman and Joker. Now, I want you to know that this is a bit misleading because Walter Hamada did not like the Joker. He did not support the Joker. He did not want the Joker to be made. Yes, the Joker definitely did get made under him, but it was like a throwaway movie that was not anticipated to be that good. Expect more big wins from this trio. Well, when it comes to Pam Lifford, I expect nothing but catastrophic and embarrassing losses. And when it comes to the DC films, I noticed that he mentioned Aquaman and Joker, but he didn't mention any of the previous movies, because those movies are fucking terrible. Don't get me wrong, Wonder Woman wasn't a bad movie, but aside from that, his DC cinematic universe was a complete and utter flop, because the whole DC attempted universe were just awful, terrible, just awful. Like, people saw them because they're DC movies, not because they're good. Kevin Feige, he should be number one, by the way. The head of Marvel Studios is now the chief creative officer of Marvel, taking the place of Joe Quesada, because Joe Quesada is a piece of garbage who's incompetent, who has dismissed Ike Perlmutter from having any creative role in the company, because Ike Perlmutter is also incompetent and has been asleep at the wheel while Marvel turned into a trash fire. At least when it comes to the comic side. Kevin Feige has taken creative control of TV, games, merchandise, and comics, alongside the films he already headed up. The comics have often tried to mirror what he was doing in the films. That's bullshit. Rich Johnson is just straight up flat out lying. One of the biggest criticisms of Marvel is that they have had absolutely no connection to the films at all. It has been a wasted opportunity because Axel Alonso, along with Joe Quesada and Ike Perlmutter, are incompetent, dick-headed morons. Kevin Feige is not going to put up with that shit. He is going to put a stop to all these wasted and squandered opportunities. However, I do believe personally that the damage has been done, and that there will never be a chance for that to have that synergy between the Marvel comics and the movies. Because the movies are about pretty much done, and the comics have just thrown away whatever goodwill they had, because the creators have been pieces of garbage. Moving on to Dave Pilkey, who is a new entry. Now, you should not have new entries becoming the number one. Dave Pilkey has been an influential person for a long time. He's been selling books for a long time. The Dogman series, I'm pretty sure, goes all the way back to 2016. I'm pretty sure it didn't just come out of nowhere in 2018, but I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. Dave Pilkey is also just a writer. Whoever is the executive president or whoever's in charge at Scholastic, they should be number one. And Dave Pilkey and Reina Tiggle, they can below the president of Scholastic, because they're ultimately working under the president of Scholastic. But there's no way a writer is more important than the actual person who's making the executive decisions. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Let's read this. The best-selling comic creator in the USA, with his comic series Dogman, now beating out his semi-comic book series Captain Underpants. 2019 saw him dominate the best-selling charts, with both selling in their millions. Dogman had a 5 million print run, matching Asterisks for the first time, and sold out. Speaking of which, why isn't the writer or creator of Asterisk on here if they're that powerful and influential? I mean, if you want to say that this is the best, is this American focused? No, it's not. The complete Bleeding Cool top 100 power list of comics in 2019 in full, with no emphasis at this being America only. So there should be some editors, creators coming out of Mexico, some writers coming out of the Asterisk writer, who I believe is French, should be on here somewhere, if Asterisk is selling that many, unless he did not mean in 2019. The 2019 volume for Whom the Ball Rolls, released in August, has already sold 40% more copies than last year's Lord of the Fleas in total. and that was before Christmas sales figures came in. And he pulls massive crowds wherever he tours. No one can touch him, and everybody wants to sell like him. And publishers are doing their best to creators to look like him too. Are they? Because that's really stupid. I mean, I'm not saying he's ugly or anything. I'm just saying, look like him? It's a bit much. Anyway, thank you so much. I wish I could have continued to take shots, but I sincerely believe that if I had, I would have died. Because that's how badly written this series of articles was. Just run on sentence. Run on. Sentences that are so run on, you would think that it was a marathon and not a sprint. I'm sure that sounded clever in my head, but fuck you, I'm drunk. Let's actually rate this intro here. Every year, Bleeding Cool runs its top 100 power list of members of the English-speaking comic book industry. Okay, never mind, that explains why Asterisk wasn't here. Weighted towards the direct market, it is judged by all manner of attributes. The ability to influence what comics exist itself, but also the willingness to use that power in the industry to affect things, and the ability to retain said power if a job is taken away, which is why you'll see a number of people in a higher spot than their bosses or superiors. It also helps if they have a multiplicity of disciplines. A comic publisher that also has a comic store chain is often a plus. A comic creator who also works as an agent is another. But the one thing that everyone will be able to agree on is that this list is wrong. It is informed by my own perspective. And while I receive counsel across the industry, it is always will be a judgment call. Don't like it, do your own list, and justify those choices, as I will try to do with all of mine. I think I might have read this at the start, but anyway, Rich Johnson, a piece of shit writer. Rich Johnson is a piece of shit as a human being. He's also a very shit writer, and I'm glad I was able to go through this journey with you. I want to say, if you've watched all 4 videos, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you're just tuning in for the first time, thank you so much all the same. I really appreciate you, the audience. This was actually pretty fun kind of thing. I'm going to take a shower and then go to a party. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.